Good afternoon everyone, and welcome to the webinar today on World Usability Day. Happy World Usability Day to everyone first of all. I'm going to give a short presentation today, approximately 10 minutes long, and the topic will be on customer experience in a transparent world. If you've seen the summary to the presentation, what I'll be talking about is the fact that customer experience to date has been treated very much as a tactical issue. But what I'll be discussing is that the nature of certain consumer trends has meant that customer experience has now become a strategic imperative that impacts all parts of the business. First thing before I begin, you may be looking and squinting at your computer screens and wondering what that appendage is above my nose. It's a mustache, and I'm growing it for Movember in aid of prostate cancer charity. You can support us. Please go to the Foviance.com website. One of my colleagues are sporting mustaches for the rest of the month. The others probably aren't as pathetic as the one you're seeing before you right now. Okay, before we begin, what I'd like to say is we're going to have some questions at the end of the presentation as well. So if you're watching now, please do ask some questions afterwards. Anything the topics that the topic that I'm going to be talking about today. Happy to answer some questions. I'm also interested in hearing whether you actually concur with my thinking and the things that I'll talk about. You can challenge the thinking, of course, as well, so please feel free to interact afterwards. I'm more than happy to answer any of those questions and participate in the discussion. First of all, a little bit of setting the context. I don't know how many of you out there are very familiar with customer experience, so I thought it might make sense to talk about why customer experience is important, first of all. At Foviance here, we've developed our thinking into what we call the customer experience ripple effect. As you can see here in the slide behind you, I think when a lot of people think about usability and user experience, they think a lot about conversion, and it's getting people to that transaction as easily as possible. Well, of course, that's important, but it's not the only benefit of customer experience. And we see this ripple effect as impacting businesses in a very substantial way, right out through brand advocacy. So what you see at the beginning is the sale, of course. If you can encourage people through a positive user experience to transact with you as an organization, you're going to have more transactions. The second one, the terminology is taken from the retail space, is about lift or cross-selling or upselling. The easier, the more immersive the experience, more frictionless the experience, the more likely people will avail of the other products that you offer. Profitability, consumers are now living in a multi-channel world, and we know that the cost of self-serve is considerably cheaper than serving people face-to-face using employees and so on. So obviously if we can get as much of that custom through that self-serve channel, i.e. the web, then it leads to profitability increases for the organization. The fourth one is loyalty. We all know if we interact with the company and they treat us well, that we're more likely to come back to that organization in the future, and this has implications for the business with regards to customer churn and keeping customers over the longer term with regard to retention. The last one, and probably most important considering what I'm going to talk about today, is this notion of brand advocacy. How do you get people to talk in a positive way using word of mouth about your brand? And as I'll talk during the presentation about, this is becoming a critical element in the strategy of most organizations out there today. So first of all, just kicking off, now well, you can see the title to the slide there, but what I want to talk about first of all is why user experience has been treated as a tactical endeavor to date. There are numerous reasons for this, but the first one I think is that balance has always been tipped in favor of business. And what we've seen is that the business and organization, the commercial world, has used the media almost as a smokescreen, but really the media didn't necessarily work in the favor of consumers. So what we had is advertising and marketing down through the years communicating in one-way capacity the organization's messages, but there was very little opportunity there for consumers to engage in that dialogue in a two-way capacity. Singular voices are easily dismissed. So in the past, if you had an issue with an organization and you tried to bring that to the organization's attention, it was easily dismissed by that organization. There wasn't an opportunity really for people to aggregate together to make their voices heard. And what we see, or what we've seen in the past, is that this customer sentiment really couldn't be channeled in a way that was meaningful. What I'll talk about throughout the rest of the presentation is how two consumer trends are making customer experience a lot more strategic than it has been in the past, and particularly looking at how that customer sentiment is being channeled in more meaningful ways and will be in the future. So the first trend is what we're seeing is a growing distrust of business, and just to bring that to life a little bit using some research. This first piece of research here is from Forrester, and the question they asked consumers was, how much do you trust the following information sources? And just running through them, I won't go through them all in detail, but the first one is email from people you know. The second one is consumer product ratings and reviews. I think we're all familiar with using product ratings and reviews now prior to making a purchase. Portal search engines, but what's quite telling is down at the bottom here we have company blog, online classifieds, direct mail. Traditional types of advertising are tending to lose their potency over time, and what people are relying on are the opinions of others out there, other consumers, and they're becoming more and more cynical about the communications coming from the corporate world. Another piece of research, this one's from the PR company called Edelman. They produce a report from a rigorous study every year called the Edelman Trust Barometer. And what's that shown over the last few years is there's declining trust in business. And what you see here in this chart, I'll just read this out for you in case you can't see it very clearly on your screen. Thinking about everything you have read, seen or heard about business in the last year in general, do you trust corporations a lot less, a little less, the same, a little more, or a lot more than you did at the same time last year? So what they were measuring was that decrease in trust on the year previous. And what you see here is the percentage who trust companies less. Down the bottom here are the countries themselves, so you can see a country by country comparison. And here you can see, for example, in Germany, 73% of people trust businesses less than they did a year ago. In the UK, that number is 67%. Now, there is a variation across the countries, but there's certainly a theme here, and it's quite a telling theme and something that organisations need to be mindful of. The second main trend is this rapid spread of consumer opinion. So what we've been seeing over the last few years with the adoption of Twitter, with blogs, with social networking, is people's voices and their views, their sentiment can be amplified exponentially on what they could talk about before. So this gives consumers an opportunity to grab the attention of brands and ask organisations to stand up and listen. And again, some further research on this. This is again some Forrester research. They produced something called the Social Technographics Study that categorises consumers into these 6 categories. Some people are called creators. These are people who publish their own blogs, for example. Others are critics. These are people who write comments on blogs, but also write reviews, contribute ratings, and that type of thing. There are then collectors, joiners, spectators, and inactives, who are other groups who are less active online, or at least less in a creating capacity online. The important ones, of course, are those 2 top ones, which Forrester are finding are increasing all of the time. Now, as you can see by the numbers here, about 1/5 of the population are either in the creator or the critic bracket. So it means that people are out there, they're talking all of the time, and they're talking about brands. I saw a study the other day, an academic study, from an academic at a Dutch university, and he found that 20% of all Twitter tweets talk about a brand, either positively or negatively, but there's a brand mention in there. Now, that's a fantastic opportunity for the right organisation to be communicating using positive word of mouth. Another example here is from McCann Erickson, and the question was how people share opinions about products, brands and services. And you can see here a lot of people are talking on instant messenger, telling other people via email, commenting on a product, service review on a blog and weblog. So these tools, some of them of course are embryonic, but they're allowing people to talk to one another in unprecedented ways, and really organisations should be tapping into that channel.